And one of the things we're talking about is it's serious. We've seen this uptick in requests for interim
Mhm.
CEOs and presidents. And these requests are coming from boards replacing the top leadership, as well as owners replacing themselves. It's really been an interesting couple of years, and I'd love to get your thoughts on what's driving this.
Well, there's a lot of things that are driving it. Boards aren't putting up with lack of performance, for one, or investors. If you're owned by a private equity group or a family office, or just a board of directors, and that could be in different buckets. It could be lack of numbers performance. It could be the culture. They're not happy with the culture, or the change in the culture is not happening at a pace that they appreciate, or it's going in a direction that they don't like. Could be that they're not liking the plan, or the misalignment in what they think the plan should be, or it could just be a lack of non-responsiveness. But then again, there's other things. There could be a leadership gap, and they just can't get their arms around it, or they don't understand it, and they don't feel they lost confidence in the CEO, or the CEO doesn't want to deal with that, so he's stepping out. It could be the company's on the wrong track. They could be experiencing a period of plateauing. It could be that they're stuck. They're not progressing like they want, or they don't know the direction to go. I run into that a lot with CEOs and business owners because it can be very lonely. And if you're a CEO and you have a board, or you have investors like private equity or family office or other investors, you're no longer the shareholder. There are shareholders with an S. It changes the dynamics. And, we all learned in high school that you have two responses to stress: fight or flight. That is incorrect. It's action or it's inaction. And you can look at, the military. What's the first thing they teach you to do is get off the X. And when you're off the X, you're either fighting or you're fleeing. But if you're not, you're frozen. And that happens sometimes. It could be that there's not an operational roadmap, or the market is changing. There's a lack of innovation, which I want to touch on a little bit later, because I think that's a big part of what we're talking about, is the lack of innovating and then executing against that innovation and creating a culture of innovation, what that looks like and what that means. Sometimes the board just wants to replace the CEO because, again, like, they've been fed up. Sometimes it's the CEO wants to leave, has a different opportunity, doesn't like it. And then sadly, sometimes life happens. A CEO gets sick. I finished an interim CEO role last year that I don't want to get into specifics, but one company wanted to buy a competitor. It was a patriotic, I can't say that word, run company. The dad had two sons and a daughter-in-law, and they wanted to go buy a competitor. They approached an investor who referred them to a private equity firm, said, "We want to buy you, and we're going to execute against your investment thesis. We're going to use those funds to go buy your competitors." And they made three acquisitions, the parent company, the main company, and then two others in very quick succession. We're talking less than 30 days. They had lined up all of the acquisitions. Within 10 days of that, they found out that the dad had a serious illness and he had to step out of the business. I don't even think he's with us today. I think he had passed. So imagine the turmoil from a cultural basis, let alone integration, executing against the plan, just the culture of change. And when they bought those competitors, they pretty much got rid of the management team because they weren't capable of doing what they wanted to do. So that's a private equity firm. I knew one of the gentlemen. Everything I've been doing is word of mouth until I met Cerius. And they just said, "Look, we need an assessment of the leadership. We need someone to step in and execute against our 100-day plan," which is an operational plan. It's an integration plan. But along the way, we need a leadership assessment. Is there somebody in the family that's ready to step in? And that happens a lot with boards on why they bring an interim CEO or an interim executive. There may be a particular expertise that they need, that that it's a temporary need. Maybe they need to make an acquisition. In this case, it was a transition of an acquisition and to implement those acquisitions, but they don't necessarily see the need for that skill set long term. So they will bring an interim like me along the way. I'm a very curious person. And I say this a lot. I never judge. I'm not a judgmental person, but I'm always assessing. I'm assessing processes. I'm assessing people. I'm assessing culture. I'm always assessing and myself. I have to turn that on myself. Am I coming across right? I'm doing it now. How am I coming across on this podcast? But I'm always doing that. That's just and that's being curious and gathering information and data. I'm sorry, go ahead.